You probably know of this guy, Rizki, but what you might not know is that he is actually the #1 weightlifter in the world right now. Not Lasha Talakadze, not Rahmat Erwin Abdullah, not even Carlos Nassar. It's him. It's Rizki. Well, technically it wasn't until a few days after this training session that he became the best weightlifter in the world. You see, Rizki Juniansyah, the young weightlifter from Indonesia, hit a truly historic world record total at the IWF World Cup of 365 kilos, which, at a body weight of exactly 73 kilos, makes him the best weightlifter in the world across all weight classes. So how did he do it? How did this young Indonesian become the best weightlifter in the world? Well, I'll explain that after I quickly fill you in on this training session that you're watching right now. It was one of the most impressive training sessions I've ever seen, and at this point I've seen thousands of weightlifting sessions, and this is top 3. He works up to an enormous 160 kilo snatch before building up to and attempting 200 kilos in the clean and jerk, a weight very few weightlifters of such a light body weight have ever hit. Also, don't forget, it's buy any 2 get 1 free across all of our incredible accessories over at weightliftinghouse.com. The link is down below. Okay, so back to explaining how Rizki is the best in the world right now. When we talk about weightlifting, athletes compete in different bodyweight categories. So how do we compare performances across these different categories? Super heavyweights lift more than 61 kilo men, but that doesn't make them better. Looking at the multiple of body weight that they lift is also not a good way to compare. Every 61 kilo weightlifter at the Olympics has lifted a higher percentage of body weight than Carlos Nassar, but they aren't as good. So how do we compare? Well, this is where the Sinclair formula comes in. The Sinclair is a calculation that allows us to compare weightlifters regardless of their body weight, kind of like Wilks in powerlifting. It adjusts each lifter's total weight lifted based on their body weight, giving us a score that levels the playing field. And this means that we can fairly assess who the strongest lifter is overall, even if they compete in different weight categories. For someone like Rizki Juniansyah, who competes in the 73 kilo category, the Sinclair score helps highlight his true strength and allows his accomplishments to be compared with athletes from other classes, like Liu Huanhua in the 102s, or even Lasha Talakadze in the plus 109s. It's a way of just showing how impressive a weightlifter is, not just within their category, but across the entire spectrum of weightlifting. People are so interested, understandably, about how weightlifters compare across different categories, that a few years back I actually wrote a book that became pretty popular called The Greatest Weightlifters of All Time, counting down the top 70 Sinclairs of all time. It's a hardback, incredible pictures, and tells the stories and careers of athletes like Klokov and Liu Xiaojun, all the way through to Lasha, Vardanyan, Dimas, and obviously Naeem. It's a few years old now, but if you're interested, I'll put a link to that down below for you. So if we use the Sinclair formula on Rizki's 365 kilo total, made up of a 164 kilo snatch and a 201 kilo clean and jerk at a body weight of 73 kilos, it gives him a Sinclair of 492.02. Now, the astute among you might notice that Rizki's 492 Sinclair is the same number as Lasha's best ever actual total, 492 kilos, from the 2021 World Championships. And this is on purpose. Essentially, the Sinclair coefficient works by adjusting everyone's performance as if they were competing in the super heavyweight category, where there's no limit on body weight. This way, it levels the playing field by accounting for the natural strength advantage that heavier weightlifters have. It also allows us to fairly compare how strong each athlete is, no matter their weight class. So each athlete's Sinclair is basically saying, how much could a weightlifter total if they were the same size as Lasha? Additionally, every 4 years it changes based on the best super heavyweight of the time, and seeing as Lasha hit his best ever total this quad of 492 kilos, essentially Rizki's 365 kilo total, when adjusted by Sinclair, aka imagining him as a super heavyweight, also gives him 492 kilos. And that blows my mind, that this total from Lasha, this ridiculous all-time heaviest lifts ever total, was just matched in terms of how impressive it was by a 20-year-old Indonesian less than a year out of surgery. Okay, so I need to come clean about something really quickly. Rizki Sinclair is 492.02 versus Lasha totaling 492 kilos at a body weight of 183.9, which gives him a Sinclair of 492.5. So less than half a Sinclair point below Lasha. That's like a hair. Basically, if Rizki had weighed 72.88 rather than 73, he would be above Lasha. But also, this video is about Rizki being the best weightlifter in the world at the moment. And at the moment, Lasha has a Sinclair of 475.39, almost 17 points below Rizki. Yes, Lasha's peak technically lies slightly above his, as does Lu Xiaojun's peak, and Naeem Suleimanoglu's peak. But of all the performances throughout the entire Olympic qualifying period, from Columbia Worlds 2022 up to and including the Olympic Games 2024, Rizki is the best weightlifter in the world. Or at the very least, he had the best performance during that time. Shi Zhiyong's best total of 364 kilos, the world record total that Rizki surpassed days after this training session, means that his all-time peak is below Rizki's. For reference, Li Dayin's 396 kilo total that was unbeaten by any 89 kilo weightlifter during the entire qualifying period puts him at a Sinclair of 480.5. Li Fabin's recent best has him at 477.51, Yasin Lopez 473.84, even Rahmat Erwin Abdullah's best total of 363 kilos at 72.8 in body weight puts him at 490.15. which is incidentally the second best performance by any weightlifter in the world over the last few years. But what about Carlos Nassar? Surely he's the best weightlifter of this last Olympics period. Well, of course, it totally depends on how you define best. I would argue that Sinclair is not the most important thing. Longevity of career, number of wins, world records, titles, dominance, etc., they are all extremely important. All of which Carlos is racking up at speeds beyond Rizki's abilities. But by Sinclair, Rizki is actually better. Rizki's 492 Sinclair is 12 Sinclair points ahead of Carlos's best during qualifying, but even if we count his 404 kilo total, the 8 kilo world record that Carlos hit at the Olympic Games, it still puts him behind Rizki by 4 points. So all of this to say, really, that Rizki Juniansyah deserves more respect, more recognition of what he's achieved during this quad. I remember back in February in Uzbekistan at the 2024 Asian Champs, I was sat in the hotel sauna when Rizki came in, looking to drop some extra weight before competition. We chatted for a while, and at that point he was less than 6 months out of his appendix surgery, and he hadn't been training long. He spoke about how difficult it had been, lying in bed, waiting for months to be allowed outside, watching as other 73s kept hitting bigger and bigger totals. Eventually, he was allowed to jog slowly, then do some cycling, before eventually lifting weights again. And despite having made a piece of content on Rizki well over a year prior about how he thinks he can beat Shi Zhiyong, a video which aged, by the way, like fine wine, I think I even predicted the 199 kilos in Paris, I still had almost forgotten about Rizki's abilities. His time off recovering had sort of removed him from my radar a bit. But to hear him in that sauna, talking about how much it would mean to him and his family to make it, was pretty amazing, and it was from that point onwards that I really started putting more stock into what he was saying. In this training session, he makes a 160 kilo snatch, but don't forget it's the same session in which Rahmat Erwin Abdullah, the other Indonesian, the world number one at the time, who Rizki has to beat, is training behind him. The intensity here was extraordinary. Rahmat had the most impressive clean and jerk session we've also ever seen from a 73 kilo weightlifter, hitting that 200 kilos like nothing. It's worth noting here too that weightlifters lift heavier and heavier weights because of their competitors. Without Rahmat having totaled 363 kilos 2 months earlier, and of course Shi Zhiyong having made 364 kilos 3 years earlier, there would never have been 365 from Rizki. Rahmat and Rizki are competitors, but also in a weird way, they require each other to achieve greatness. Without that back and forth of competition, neither would be where they are right now. It's so fascinating that the two best weightlifters in the world right now happen to both be Indonesian, both of them 73 kilos. Now, is that a coincidence, or is it just the magic of competition? Rizki may not have made the 200 kilos here, but he knew he could make it in competition. 164-201, the most incredible performance I've ever witnessed. The greatest battle for years. The crowning of the new best weightlifter alive. Subscribe for more.